Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
I think that this will increase small businesses substantially. That most small businesses, they are...
Has zero to do, come on, you're smarter than that. This is the top 0.2%. This is not a mom and pop store. These are multi-billionaires, and the savings go to their kids after they pass away. This is nothing more than a gift to billionaires in this country.
Well, sir, that's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes after TCJA.
I'm talking about one provision in this. I don't want to argue with you about taxes in general. One provision, few hundred families, $235 billion in tax breaks. You can't justify that because morally it is totally unjustifiable.
Bernie Sanders confronts Trump's Treasury Secretary over a plan that cuts Medicaid for millions while handing $235 billion to a few hundred of the richest families in America. The math is brutal, the moral stakes are higher, and Sanders refuses to let the truth be buried.
Senator Sanders. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Bessent, for being here. Help me out here. My understanding is the Trump administration has, I think, 13 billionaires in office right now, leading government agencies. Is that about right, do you think?
I have no idea, Senator.
I think that's what the number is. Do you think it's a coincidence, given the large number of billionaires in the Trump administration, that this particular piece of legislation would provide $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2% by expanding the exemptions in the estate tax?
Senator, I will tell you that when the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, my tax rate went up.
Well, I don't know your exact situation, but I can tell you. Tell me about how many people do you think are in the top 0.2%?
Sorry?
Number of people in the top 0.2% who would benefit from this particular $235 billion tax break.
Well, I know the top 10% is
right.
now paying 7%.
That's not the question.
The total
My question is, why do you think at a time of unprecedented income and wealth inequality, when people like yourself economically have never, ever had it so good, why do you think it's a good idea to cut Medicaid for low-income and working-class people by $700 billion to give $235 billion in tax breaks to the very, very, very richest people in this country, perhaps a few hundred families? Please justify that and tell me about that.
Well, Senator, I don't know, but the Democrats had the trifecta, and there was no tax increase or wealth tax on billionaires. You choose.
I'm not talking about a tax.
You chose not.
Mr. Bessent, I am not talking about a wealth tax. Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
I think that this will increase small businesses substantially. That most small businesses, they are...
Has zero to do, come on, you're smarter than that. This is the top 0.2%. This is not a mom and pop store. These are multi-billionaires, and the savings go to their kids after they pass away. This is nothing more than a gift to billionaires in this country.
Well, sir, that's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes after TCJA.
I'm talking about one provision in this. I don't want to argue with you about taxes in general. One provision, few hundred families, $235 billion in tax breaks. You can't justify that because morally it is totally unjustifiable. Let me ask you another question. If you guys want to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, the estimate from CBO, I believe, is that over 15 million people lose their health insurance. Yale University and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that when you throw that many low-income and working-class people off of health care, some 50,000 people a year will die. Tell me why you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and allow 50,000 low-income and working-class people to die unnecessarily?
Senator, first of all, that's overstated by 5.1 million. That is not attributed to this bill. It is simply...
It's a combination, that's true.
No. You all had a scheduled expiration of Obamacare subsidies, and you did not extend that when you were in charge. 5.1 million, 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid.
All right,
and there are work requirements. And our goal is to get more money to children and mothers.
Really? Your goal is to get more money to children, and working people. Really? Come on. Do you know how many people, and I was surprised to hear this, I don't know if you know it or not, how many people lose their jobs every year, quit, get fired or whatever? Do you have any idea?
Well, there's something called the quits rate, and so when the job market is strong,
I understand.
more people quit.
But yeah, I was surprised that, I just researched this. I don't know, do you happen to know?
I don't know the number.
I was surprised. Would it be shocking to you? It was to me. 20 million people leave their jobs a year. Doesn't shock you, right? It's a big labor force, right?
Yep.
So some guy leaves the job, maybe they move, maybe something happens in their lives, right? We have a lot of transition in the labor market, correct?
Maybe they get a better job.
Right, exactly. Maybe they do. Or maybe they have to stay home, their wife gets sick, whatever, we don't know. But 20 million people lose their jobs in a given year, leave their jobs in a given year. Are those people lazy? What happens when I leave my job and maybe I have to move to another state to take care of my ill mother, and I desperately need Medicaid? Am I too lazy now to be able to get Medicaid?
I think that's a mischaracterization of the work requirement.
Really? Well, I'm not quite so sure it is.
This exchange hits harder than most because Bernie Sanders refuses to let power hide behind technical language. He doesn't debate ideology, he forces a moral and mathematical reckoning. Sanders starts by exposing something Americans often sense, but rarely hear stated plainly. The Trump administration isn't just friendly to billionaires, it is run by them. A government stacked with some of the wealthiest people in the country is now advancing legislation that delivers $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. That's not a broad class of Americans, that's a few hundred families. And Sanders slows the moment down so the public can actually understand what that means. This provision isn't about small businesses. It isn't about job creators. It's about estate tax exemptions that allow enormous fortunes to be passed down to heirs, tax-free after death. Children of billionaires receiving windfalls they did not earn, financed by cuts that hit working families while they are still alive. When Bessent tries to deflect into general tax statistics, Sanders cuts him off. This isn't about the tax code as a whole, it's about one choice, one policy, one group of beneficiaries. Sanders forces that focus back into the light because this is how accountability disappears, when specifics get buried under averages. Then Sanders makes the comparison unavoidable. To pay for these billionaire tax breaks, the administration proposes hundreds of billions in cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. According to the Congressional Budget Office, more than 15 million Americans could lose health coverage. Independent researchers estimate that cutting that many people off from care could lead to as many as 50,000 preventable deaths every single year. Sanders doesn't dramatize that number. He lets it sit there, because once Americans hear it, there's no hiding from it. This is where the exchange becomes deeply human. Healthcare isn't an abstract benefit. It's cancer screenings, insulin, emergency room visits, prenatal care, medication that keeps people alive long enough to go back to work, raise kids, and care for family members. Sanders forces the public to see the connection between budget lines and human lives, something policy debates are often designed to obscure. When Bessent shifts to work requirements, Sanders dismantles the myth behind them. Every year, roughly 20 million Americans leave jobs, not because they're lazy, but because life intervenes. People move, people get sick, parents care for dying relatives, marriages fall apart, jobs disappear. Sanders asks the question policymakers avoid. When someone loses a job because of circumstances beyond their control, are they suddenly undeserving of medical care? This isn't about encouraging work, it's about punishing vulnerability. Medicaid functions as a bridge during instability, not a reward for perfection. Turning it into a conditional privilege doesn't create productivity, it creates fear. And fear doesn't build a strong economy, it fractures it. What Sanders ultimately exposes is the deeper logic behind this plan. Wealth is treated as sacred, human need is treated as negotiable. When money flows upward to those who already have more than they can spend in a lifetime, it is called fiscal policy. When help flows downward to those struggling to survive, it is called waste. Sanders refuses that framing. He reminds Americans that budgets are moral documents. Every dollar reflects a value judgment, and this bill makes its values unmistakably clear. It protects inherited wealth while placing working families one medical emergency away from disaster. This exchange matters because it reveals how inequality is not accidental, it is legislated, carefully, quietly, through provisions most Americans never hear explained unless someone like Sanders forces the explanation into public view. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. Should a few hundred wealthy families receive massive tax breaks while millions risk losing health care? Or has this crossed a moral line? Share your thoughts below. Americans deserve this conversation.